You're welcome back. Still watching Business Morning here on Channels Television. It's commodities time now, and joining us for that conversation is Dr. Adesola Sumoni. Joins us from Reading. Is a senior analyst, financial derivatives company. Hi, Doctor. Good morning, and thank you so much for your time.
Good morning, Ine. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, so we see a lot of factors hitting one way or the other on global oil, from the China demand and economy to the U.S. reserve and all of that. And okay, so we saw it hit about over 85, came down to 80, now to 85. What's going on really?
Thank you for your question, Ine. So like we mentioned, oil prices, many factors are driving oil prices at the moment. One big factor is China. China's economy has not grown as expected since they removed their COVID-19 restrictions. So the economy has performed weaker than expected. We're seeing weak spending. We are seeing weak a property crisis, real estate crisis in the country, and all of this is affecting oil demand. In addition to that, instead of importing more oil, what China is doing, they are drawing down on inventories, on their oil inventories, and that is weighing on oil prices on the demand side. We are also seeing from OPEC Plus production cuts, stronger production cuts are coming from OPEC Plus. We saw Saudi Arabia saying that they're going to produce only around 9 million barrels of oil per day, which is effectively reducing their production by around 1 million barrel per day through to September, and that is supporting prices. We're also seeing at the end of the summer driving season, which is expected to end next week, so that demand is also going to go offline. So these are some of the factors driving oil prices at the moment, and going forward we expect two key factors to drive oil prices going forward. One is China's economy. We are seeing the People's Bank of China try to implement some measures to stimulate the economy, to boost consumer spending and economic growth. So we expect that to affect oil demand going forward. Also, the possibility of another interest rate hike is expected to weigh on sentiment, weigh on economic growth, as well as demand for oil. So those are two factors I think are going to drive oil demand going forward.
And you mentioned the OPEC Plus cuts, and we know that Saudi Arabia and Russia are leading that. Now, these two countries are also involved in BRICS. The summit starts today. While Saudi Arabia is not yet a member, we learned they have applied to become a member. What impact do you think? I mean, if this, Nigeria is also their vice president is there. So if all these oil producing countries come up to BRICS, what impact do you think it will have on supply and prices in the global space?
I think membership of BRICS do not really drive oil prices to my knowledge. Obviously OPEC Plus in particular are trying to keep oil prices, steady, elevated to some extent because of revenues for oil revenues in their own country. Meanwhile, other countries like the US also want to keep oil prices lower, right? So, but what we are seeing is OPEC Plus, for instance, that they are implementing sharper production cuts to keep the market tight. Right. We're also seeing Russia selling their oil at discounted prices to Asia, to try to also get some revenue from that. So I think OPEC still has the big driver. OPEC is still a big driver of oil prices at the moment, and I think their production cuts are still keeping the market tight and undersupplied.
All right, now gas seems to be receiving more attention in Nigeria. We're happy about that. Now we have the Minister of State for gas. Good news for us, but we see globally liquefied natural gas is surging.
This is the price in Europe in particular. So what is happening is we are seeing one of the key export terminals in Australia. Workers in that export terminal in Australia are threatening to strike, citing poor working condition, low wages, etc. And this export terminal is quite significant because it accounts for around 4% of global natural gas production. Now, if the threat of strike materializes, it means that it's going to disrupt global natural gas production. Now, while Australia does not particularly supply natural gas to Europe, if the threat of strike materializes, then the buyers of Australian natural gas would then compete with Europe, with the EU for alternative suppliers of gas. But it's important to note that even though we are seeing EU gas prices trend upwards at the moment, I think it is quite temporary because its fundamentals are solid. Only on Saturday, over the weekend, the EU met its target for natural gas storage ahead of the winter, and this was 2 months in advance. I think currently the EU storage is around 91% full. So I think that is positive. They have enough supplies for the winter, and so whatever happens in Australia, I think should not really push gas prices in Europe too much.
Yeah, well, we hope that's the case. But let's see what else is happening in the commodity space, cocoa and other commodities. What's happening to them?
For cocoa, currently we are seeing the price of cocoa trend a little bit downwards, but the outlook is we're seeing the price of cocoa trend downwards, but the balance of the risks are downwards, because if you look at from the supply side, we are seeing weather conditions really threaten production in West Africa. If you look at big producers like Ivory Coast, like Ghana, like Nigeria, Cameroon, all of them have supply constraints, which is reducing their production as well as their exports. We have, in Ghana in particular, the black pod disease is reduced their harvest for this marketing year by around 24%. Also in Ivory Coast, we are seeing black pod disease. Also, I was seeing lack of fertilizer due to the Ukraine-Russia war, also constrained their output. In Nigeria, we are seeing similar situation as well. But on the demand side, we are seeing some demand, but we are seeing some positive demand. I think year on year, the demand for cocoa by the National Confectionaries Association showed a 10% increase year on year as at I think the end of June. So that is some positive news on the demand side. But on the supply side, we are seeing supply constraints, and that is likely to keep prices trending upwards in the near to medium term. In the domestic commodities market, we are seeing a mixed bag really for some commodities like tomatoes, peppers, palm oil, and gari. We are seeing the prices trend downwards because of the harvest season, which is quite positive. But on the other hand, we are still seeing some prices trend upwards. If you look at the price of rice, the price of flour, the price of beans and onions, all of them are still trending upwards at this time. So it's a mixed bag.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Adesola Sumoni, for your time and analysis this morning. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.
Let's take a breather. We'll be back in a moment.